Hello, I'm Renee Fouts, and it's my pleasure to be with you for a few minutes today. Before we get started, let me give you a little bit of background so you know me a little bit better. I have been working at the Academy for the last 43 years. It has been absolutely a blessing and a joy to my heart to be able to work with teens every single day. So what have I done during those last 43 years? Well, I started out as a high school librarian. And at first I thought, oh no, a librarian, they're just quiet and they tell people, don't talk in here. But I found out being a librarian was wonderful and I got to know the students on a whole different level. So I enjoyed that portion of my career. And then came the day when they asked me to be cheer coach, and I did that for 13 years. And my relationship with the girls was great. I consider them some of my sweet alumni relationships to this day. Along the way, they asked me if I would start up the computer lab way back in the days before we even had computers at school. And I can remember we started with 10 little Mac Minis in our old building. And the day my principal asked me to do that, I just laughed. I said, but you don't understand. I've never touched a computer before. And we decided it would work just fine. I would work ahead of the students and learn ahead of them. And it did. God was good. Now, today, the kids know so much more about technology than I do that it would never work, but then it worked beautifully. And then came the day my principal asked me if I would be willing to step into a dean's position. And that too was a learning step for me. I, by nature, don't like confrontation, don't like to work with discipline, but God has given me a heart that's really for the students, and it's a real privilege to work alongside them and help them grow and help them mature in the things of the Lord. And so these last 23 years or so, I have been in the dean's office, and our administrator has been kind enough to let me step out an hour of the day and teach the students. So I get to teach them a Bible class and a life management class as a general rule. And I love having the opportunity to share Jesus Christ with our kids and what amazing Savior we have. And then teaching them how that they can make good decisions that will honor Him and help them be successful as they live their life for Him. So that's a little bit about my background. And now you kind of know my heart for the classroom. I've been with these kids for a long time. Someone asked me once, how in the world can you stand to spend 7 or 8 hours a day with teenagers? And my answer to them was, I can't imagine doing anything else. So I'm in and out of the classroom, and I've seen classrooms that run just like a clock, a well-oiled machine, and that's a great thing. And I wanted to share some tips with you today so that as we look forward to this coming school year, we can have classrooms that run that well, where we can enjoy learning, we can enjoy teaching, and our students can enjoy the process as well. So kids are excited, they love to talk, they love to chat, they love to share things, they love to think about what they're going to be doing after school or tomorrow. They're filled with excitement, and we have to figure out how to take all that energy and package it and focus it so that we can get a lot done academically while they still have fun doing that. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. If we work on our management skills, then the time that we need to spend in discipline is greatly reduced, and that's a good thing, right? Specifically, let's ask a question. Why do we even have to have a classroom management plan? Well, we all have academic goals to reach. Well, we have a curriculum that's jam-packed, it's robust by design, and we have a lot to do. And so if our classes are managed well, we can accomplish those academic goals, and that's one thing that school is all about, academics, right? We can equip students for success in our classrooms today. If we have good management skills, a good management plan, we can help our students do well participating in class, the very hour that we're teaching. We can help them be able to do their homework well. We can help them be able to do well in a quiz or a test coming up. Those are all short-term goals for our students. But we can also take those same skills and help our students have success long-term in whatever the Lord calls them to do. We can make enjoyable learning periods for our students. Who wants to come to school and be bored all day long? Who wants to come to school and feel stressed that you cannot do what you're being asked to do? Nobody wants those things. So if our classes are managed well, we can help our students feel assured that they can be up to the task and that they can be successful and that they're going to have a good time doing that. A management plan gives us good quality time to have with our students. We maximize the benefits of the time that we spend together. And if our time is maximized, we can accomplish those academic goals that we need to. And we can have a little bit of time maybe left over in that lesson to add some sparkle to it. Add some just plain fun. You don't need to remember this for an upcoming test. But what about this? For instance, did you know that there's enough DNA in your body to go from the sun to Pluto and back 17 times? That's a lot of DNA. Put some of those facts in your lesson. How about this? We wash our hands to try to get the bacteria off of them. And we're learning, right? Sing the alphabet song twice, or wash your hands for 20 seconds and make sure that you get all the germs off your hands. Did you know that the average human body carries 10 times more bacteria than it does human cells? Hey, our students like some of those things that they're not going to have to remember. They're just fun learning facts to add to your lessons. So those are some good reasons to have a management plan. Management plans teach our students long-term goals like the importance of being prompt. Someday they're going to have a job and their employer's going to want them to show up for work on time. Well, we can start by teaching them to show up for class on time. Employers are going to want them to be responsible, to keep their word, to do what they say they're going to do. These are all skills that we can teach in our classrooms when they're well managed. So this is why we have a plan. What are some of our expectations in our classroom? Every teacher has expectations. I know that you do, and I'm putting you on the spot if I just say, what expectations do you have for your class this year? So let me get us started thinking of what just a few expectations might be. There's going to be a lot more expectations, but for our time together, let's just talk about a few of them. For instance, how do we expect our students to enter our classrooms? Do you teach junior high? How do they enter your classroom if they're not trained to enter it properly? They come in bounding in the door, running, knocking each other over, knocking books out. They're just excited. They're exuberant. They have all this energy and they don't know what to do with it. So what are our expectations? Do we want them to walk into our classroom like little tin soldiers, quiet as a mouse, not saying anything to anybody? No, we don't want that. So what would some reasonable expectations to be? Well, I have some expectations in my classroom. I want them to come in an orderly fashion. Don't be knocking people around. I want them to come in friendly. If there's someone sitting in the classroom and they're all by themselves and nobody's talking to them, I want them to learn that the natural, the normal thing to do is to go over and say hi to that student and engage them in the classroom. So I want them to come in not too rowdy. I want them to come in being friendly. And I want them to come into my class with the expectation of getting ready for the lesson. So they'll get to their seat. They can still chat with their friends till the bell rings, but they're getting out their textbook. They're getting out their homework. They're getting ready for class because when the bell sounds for class to begin, I'm going to get right into the lesson. So classroom arrival, we'll think through those expectations. What do we expect our students to do while somebody else is speaking? That's something that we need to consider in a classroom. Our students aren't necessarily going to know what our expectations are, and they may not have these expectations for themselves, so we share them. What is an expectation I have if someone is speaking? Well, I expect that our students will listen to what they have to say. And not just listen, but to actively listen to whomever is speaking, to give them the respect that that person deserves. So what is active listening? Active listening means that I don't only hear what somebody's saying, but I think about what they're saying. And when I think about what they're saying, I think, now, what actions do I need to take as a result of what they're saying? So for instance, if I said to my class, we're going to be starting on page 3 in our lesson today, I would expect my students to process that and think, oh, Mrs. Fouts said we're starting on page 3 of the lesson today. I need to get out my history book. I need to open my book. I need to turn to page 3. I need to be ready to follow along with whatever it is that we're going to talk about, and I need to be ready to participate in class. So what do we expect them to do when others are when others are speaking? We need to expect them to be active listeners. How do we expect our class to behave while attention must be focused on an individual? For instance, maybe Sue doesn't feel well. I can tell she's pale, she puts her head down, she's just not acting normal. I need to go and check on her. That's my responsibility as a teacher. But what do I expect the rest of my class to be doing while I'm giving Sue some special attention? Well, I don't expect them to be rowdy. I don't expect them to be causing a distraction that will take my care from Sue and put it back on them. What I expect of them is that they will find something productive to do. And if I've trained them properly, they'll look up at the chalkboard and say, oh, what is my assignment for later? I can get started on that. Or what is that critical thinking question that Mrs. Fouts put on the board? Do I know the answer to that? How would I take those facts and apply them to a different situation? And so I'm training my students in my expectations in different situations. I have to know my expectations so that I can communicate them to my students. I have to be forward thinking. I have to think, in this situation, what do I expect my students to do? And then I teach my students those expectations. So we might be saying, okay, I understand that, but there's so much in my curriculum. How in the world do I have time to take time to train my students? And of course, you and I know the answer to that. We can't afford not to take time to train our students. They're our kids for 7 hours out of the day. We wouldn't think of saying about our own children, oh, I don't have time to train them. We take time to do the important things, and training is important. And why is it important? Well, it helps us get things done in an orderly fashion in our classroom. That's an important thing. For instance, if we're going to give a quiz, we want our students to, in an orderly fashion, know what to do. We want them, without us having to tell them every time, we want them to take out 2 clean sheets of paper, a pencil, and a pen, and wait for instructions. So it helps us with an orderly flow in our classroom, but it also helps our students to have a sense of the expected. And students function very well when they know what's coming around the bend. They don't like surprises. So they know if we're saying it's time for homework check, that they have their homework out on their desk. They're working on the assignment, but their homework is right there so that I can walk by, see that it's done, and give them any guidance necessary. So training our students in how to take a quiz or how to prepare for homework check, all of these routine things can help us have a well-managed class. Much can be accomplished. For instance, if we do not have good management skills, maybe you've been there. I have been there in the past. Have you ever lost your keys? You thought, where in the world are my keys? I'm sure I put them on my nightstand, or I'm sure that I put them on the kitchen counter, or I'm sure I put them in my purse. And we spend so much time looking for lost things, where when we train ourselves, oh, when I get home, I put those keys right on the key ring before I do anything else. We have saved ourselves so much time in future days in looking for those keys. Well, when we save ourselves time because we've trained ourselves, then we have time to do other things. We have time in a classroom to have richer learning take place. We have time to then ask our students critical thinking questions at the end of a lesson. How are we going to take these facts in this new situation and apply them? And so richer learning, deeper learning can take place when we're organized and well managed. It's never a waste of time to train our students. It does take time, but it's time well spent. We put the time in early and we get dividends all year long on the investment that we've put in. Training is a tool for you to use. It makes our classroom tasks get done more easily. You need tools to teach. You need lots of them. A classroom management plan is just one. Think about being a surgeon. A surgeon has all of these tools laid out on the table before surgery. Each one is important. Each one is vital, and you can't get the job done for surgery without having all of those tools. Classroom management is one of your tools. If you're a construction worker, you've got a whole bag or a whole belt full of tools. As a teacher, we have lots of tools. Time management and a good management plan is one of those. So how does our plan work in the long run? What's a larger picture? We decide on our expectations, and then we have to explain those expectations to our students. They don't get our expectations by osmosis, like sometimes we think they do. We think, oh, you ought to know this. Well, we can't go on that premise in 2021. We know our expectations. We relate those expectations to our students. Then we give our students the opportunity to practice implementing those expectations. And we don't expect them to be perfect at the beginning. They'll get better and better with the practice. And then finally, we take those expectations and we hold our students accountable for maintaining the expectations. So let's look at our two main goals, and they're really gifts that we give our students, and they're really gifts to us too. A good classroom management plan is going to give me the freedom to teach. I'm not having to stop and discipline this student or change the way we do this because I've thought through things ahead of time. I've taught my students how things are going to go, and now I have the freedom to teach an enjoyable lesson. I've taken time to prepare it. I've done my research. I've done my practice, and now I just get to share it with my kids. That's a wonderful thing. So it gives me freedom to teach. It gives them freedom to learn. It makes things enjoyable for them. And it gives our students the gift of self-discipline. Self-discipline, that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Again, I go back to junior high students. So let me give you an example of a great learning experience with self-discipline. I don't know how your school operates as far as students arriving to class on time, but I expect for my students to be seated, fully seated, before the tone for class begins to sound. So it's not okay for them to slide into home plate as the bell is sounding. No, they're late. If they're late, I give them something called a late slip. At the beginning, it doesn't mean anything. Bob, you were late to class. That's a late slip. And I move right on with my lesson. After class, I fill out that late slip. I turn it into the office. No big deal. Second time Bob is late, he slides in again. First time he got away with it, he thinks, oh, well, all she said was, Bob, you're late. So the second time he slides in, I say, Bob, you were late to my class a second time. When I turn this late slip in this time, you're going to get a form to take home to your parents, and it's going to need to be signed and returned tomorrow. And it lets your parents know that if you're late again, then you'll have to stay after school for an hour for detention. All of a sudden, oh. But for a seventh grader, sometimes it's still, okay, yeah, whenever I get that form, I'll take it home. It's no big deal. I'll lose it in my book bag or, whatever. Maybe she'll forget about collecting it. But Bob's late for the third time. And this time I say, Bob, you need to see me after class. That's your third late slip. That's going to be a detention. And pretty soon Bob goes, oh, I have to stay after school for an hour? That means I can't go over to my friend's house tomorrow after school. That means my parents have to come pick me up from detention. They're not going to like to have to do that. You know what? I better be on time to class now. And amazingly, he's able to be on time to class. Well, for some students, it takes a few more detentions to learn that self-discipline. But for most students, that kicks in, and all of a sudden they start to discipline themselves to be on time so that I don't have to discipline for them to be on time. So it's a great gift of self-discipline for our students. It gives them freedom to learn and helps them have an opportunity to have a lifetime of success in management. Well, I've got some personal tips to you that come from all of these years of experience that I have. I was thinking in my introduction that when I said I had been in the dean's office for 23 years, that's almost a quarter of a century, and that was frightening. But all of those years that I've been here have helped me see some things that I can apply. They're just down to earth, they're practical tips. So here they are. Organization makes a great first impression for students. We're about to kick off a new school year. They're going to come into our classroom for the first time or for the first time after being gone for several months. And when they walk into our classroom, if they can see that you have it all together, that's going to really put their mind at ease. Oh, I was afraid that I couldn't do Algebra 1. But my teacher has assured me that we're going to make it okay, that I'm going to learn and she's going to help. And if I do A, B, and C, I'm going to be able to get this done. She's organized. He's organized. Look, they have things around the classroom that I can tell they're going to be good leaders for me. When they walk in that first day, your wastebasket should be emptied. That's a silly thing. That's a little thing. But it's a first impression. When they come in and look at your chalkboard, your writing is straight, doesn't go up and down and all over the board. She's organized. He's organized. They see pictures up on the wall, maybe a calendar that they see on the wall with all of the events that they could be involved in for the next week or month. And they think, oh, okay, I can refer to that. I'm going to know what to do in this classroom. Maybe on the side, you have put up things that you want them to know for the first day. Maybe it's as simple as take a seat before the bell, have your books open too, and it's just reassuring for them to say, you know what? My teacher's in the driver's seat. She knows where we're going. She says it's going to be okay. So I'm going to hop on the bus and follow her, and we are going to have a great year in this classroom. Organization. Have a room that's neat and clutter-free. Let the students know you're ready for business, and it's going to be a great time together in class. That's one tip. Be organized. Make a great first impression. Another tip that I have down is to be intentionally pleasant. Why do I say that? Why is it really so vitally important? We have no idea what has gone on with our students prior to them stepping foot into our classroom in the morning. Maybe mom and dad have just had an argument and they have heard hard, harsh, unkind words, and they're upset about that. Maybe our students have come from a home where mom and dad didn't think that they were listening, and they heard mom and dad talk about the fact that they were considering divorce. I've had a student say to me, Mrs. Fouts, would you pray for me today? I was in my room and I heard my mom tell my dad that she was leaving. I'm really having a hard time concentrating today. Our students need to see us as pleasant people. They need to know when they come into our classrooms from the very first day that we're going to be kind to them, that we're going to listen to them, that they can feel comfortable in the classroom and they can have a stress-free few minutes when they're with us. Model polite manners from day one. So isn't that kind of like being pleasant? Pleasant is a look on your face. It's a tone of your voice. But modeling polite manners goes further. It's showing them how to interact in society. It's saying, would you please? Hey, thank you so much for doing that. I didn't even ask you to pick that up, but you saw trash on the floor and you picked it up. That's great. Thank you so much. Hey, it looks like you're carrying a heavy load. My hands are free. I'm going your direction. Let me take half of that for you. I'd be happy to walk with you. Let them see what manners looks like in action so that they can model those. So a tip is organization. A tip is being intentionally pleasant. A tip is modeling polite manners. An important one for 2021 is never put your hands on a student. Either the parent or the student, whether you touch that student out of love and concern, or whether you touch that student out of frustration, it's just never a good idea. In 2021, the parent or the student may feel uncomfortable with you putting your hands on their child in any way, shape, or form. So the best thing to do is remember, we don't touch our students. Now that doesn't only help us and put the student at ease, but it also helps them see how they should relate to each other. In a school situation, it's just hands off. We give our classmates their personal space. We don't put our hands on them. We don't put our hands on their belongings. So we are setting the tone that will help them get along better throughout the day. Another tip is modeling good communication skills. Don't ever act out of frustration and do something rather than speak. So for instance, if you're frustrated, don't say to your class, shh. Use good words. If you're frustrated, don't go over there and flip the light switch up and down to try to catch their attention. Use good communication skills and verbally communicate to them. You are showing them that no matter how your emotions may be, you communicate in kindness. It might be in firmness, but it's still in kindness, and you teach them to communicate well verbally. We expect them to communicate well when they're giving a book report. We expect them to communicate well using written communication, and so we want to model that for them. Free yourself from verbal clutter. You may not even realize that you're saying like. Do you hear your students say like a lot? You may not realize that you've picked that up and you're using that in your conversations. Or perhaps you say so at the beginning of every other sentence, or some pet phrase that you might have. Try to rid that from your communication and be a good model to them. How do you do that? Well, you could watch yourself after you've been speaking by recording yourself, and that's always a very humbling thing to do. I speak from experience. But that's a learning tool for you. And then additionally, you could ask your students. I know a student who one time had a notebook, and in that notebook, he had his teacher's names, and he would tally how many times during the hour they said a particular word. So our students notice when we have a lot of verbal clutter, and they're more than happy to share that with us when we ask. So use good communication skills. Be organized, be pleasant, be mannerly, keep your hands off your students, communicate well with your words, and then ask yourself, when do I start this management plan that you've been talking about, Mrs. Fouts? When's a good time to initiate that? And my answer is the very first time you see your students, the very first day of school, whether it's orientation day or if you don't have orientation, the very first day of school, your students are so feeling new and out of their element on those first couple days of school that they're much less likely to exhibit poor behavior. And so if you can let them know your expectations during those days, they can begin to meet those before any bad habits develop, and you have to correct them for those habits. So it helps their school year to start off on a positive note. You can teach them and they can learn before they have failure in meeting those expectations. So I would teach expectations to my students. What are some expectations that we could all agree on would be basic? Listen and follow directions. So we already had an example of this. It's our class has started, and I open class with, welcome to history class. We're going to start on page 3 today. And I've already taught my students, listen and follow directions. That's one of your jobs when you're in my classroom. Hear me, process what I'm saying, and follow through on that. Another one, though, would be to participate in class. Well, what do we mean by participate in class, and how does one participate in class appropriately? So if you have students in the past or have had them in the past, and this is the way they participate, I know. Is that the way you want them to participate in class? I don't think so. So we have to teach them what our expectations are. So I would tell them, hey, I know that there's going to be times when you want to just jump in class and let me know what's on your mind. And that's great because I really care about what's on your mind and I want you to participate. So when you want to participate, this is how we're going to do it. You put your hand up. Don't put it down just right here where I can't see it and then feel bad because I don't call on you. Put it up where I can see it, but don't be distracting to those around. Don't wave it all around. Just keep it up still. And be patient. While I'm teaching the lesson, I'm going to see that hand, and I'm going to think, as soon as I come to a great stopping point in my lesson, I'm going to recognize Bill because I'm excited to know what he's thinking about, what questions he has, because there are probably several other students in the class that may have that very same question. So I'm going to be looking forward to clarifying whatever it is he has to say. So you teach them how to participate that way. But you also teach them to participate by following through and staying focused because you want them to participate in their mind as well as actively. And so you teach them participation is an expectation that you have. And then, of course, we would want uninterrupted learning for all of the class. And so I would say, one thing that I expect of all of you is to respect your classmates. Their parents are paying tuition for them to learn during this 50 minutes. They're going to need this information to do well next year because this is a foundation that we're laying that's going to be built upon in their future academics. So it would be really selfish of me to behave in a way that takes that learning opportunity away from them. And so I'm not going to do anything during class to distract them. That's their time, that's their learning, it's my time, it's my learning. We're all doing this together, and we're also all doing it individually. So I'm going to respect my classmates and allow them to learn without being interrupted. When I'm teaching my students to respect each other, one point that I'm finding to be so necessary is teaching them that it's not okay to gossip. I have had many teenagers in my office say, "But Mrs. Fouts, it was my friend's right to know what other people were saying about them." And I asked them, did it make your friend feel better today? Did it make her have a better day to know that 3 people who she thought were their best friends were talking about her? Well, no. Gossip is always wrong. If there's a true problem where someone is going to be hurt or the Lord's testimony is going to be marred, you need to go to somebody in authority and allow that person to help the young person. But talking to each other about a problem, sharing something negative that somebody said, really doesn't do anybody any good. And so I encourage them strongly to respect each other by never talking about each other when they're not around or being unkind to each other when they are around. And lastly, be considerate of everybody's safety. Never make a comment in class, even joking, even if you think, well, everybody knows I would never do that. Never make a comment that would cause another student to fear for their safety or the safety of the classmates in general. We don't want anybody to be anxious about what may or may not happen to them today. So never make any jokes about anything that would be a threat or would be presumed to be a threat to somebody. So we're sharing with our students how to respect each other. That's part of a good management plan, another important ingredient in our classroom. And then some basic guidelines that we would all agree are important for our students that I would share with them are just 4 guidelines that will help them function in class very well. The first guideline is always keep your eyes on me as your teacher. So if I'm teaching up at the front of the classroom, keep your eyes right on me at the front. If I wander down the side chalkboard to bring attention to a point that I've put there, then your eyes should follow me. They should not be on someone else in the classroom. They should not be on the clock. This is going to help our students stay focused on what we're saying. And not only that, but if they're watching us, we can see their eyes and we can look and say, oh, Samantha looks lost. She has no idea what I'm talking about. I need to go at this from a different angle and see if I can give her understanding, see if I can make that light bulb turn on for her. So keep your eyes on me all the time, class. Remain seated during class. So why is that important? Well, because if our class's eyes are supposed to be trained on us as teachers, if somebody's getting up, doesn't that automatically draw your attention to the action over there on the other side of the classroom? Concentration and focus has gone out the window, and all of the attention has gone on to Julie, who decided to throw something out in the middle of class. So she's over there at the wastebasket, and everybody's train of thought is gone. We train our students to remain seated because we want them to prepare for class ahead of time. Do you have a student that needs to sharpen their pencil in the middle of class? Well, have we trained them before class starts? What I expect is you to have 2 pencils sharpened prior to the tone sounding. That way, if one pencil breaks, you have a backup pencil to use. So our training, our management, helps limit our distractions, and we teach our students that being prepared can help them function throughout class without having to get out of their seat. So eyes on me when I'm teaching. Only leave your seat with permission to do so. And then communicate only when permission is granted. And so what do we mean by communicate? Well, of course we mean talking. They shouldn't be whispering to each other. But communication also means if they think of something funny during class, they don't write a note and pass that note to someone else, because passing notes is communicating with someone. Or if John is trying to get James' attention, It's not okay for him to tap his pencil 3, 4, 5, 6 times until his friend looks over there to see what's going on. So we teach our students because we want to be focused, because we want to learn, we want to have this good foundation. We're going to all stay focused on the lesson and not focused on each other during class, so we don't communicate unless we have permission to do so. And lastly, in this segment, a warning for one is a warning for all. Oh boy, that is a great piece of guidance for our students. So if I say to Dawn, please don't do this. That's not acceptable in class. And then just go on with my lesson. I've taught my students to be actively listening. So they're going to hear what I've said. They're going to think about what I said. Oh, Dawn was doing this, and it's not acceptable in class. Now, what do I do with that permission? With that information? What I do with that information is don't do what Dawn's doing, because Mrs. Fouts is holding me accountable, because a warning for one is a warning for all. And that way I don't have to repeat that. Oh, you warned him, but you didn't warn me. No, a warning for one is a warning for all. And so it helps our class move along smoothly. Teenagers get tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over again. They don't want to be nagged. They don't want to be reminded. They function well when they know the guidelines and they follow those guidelines. So limiting our repeating of guidelines is really beneficial. That way, when we talk, our students know that we have something important to say, and they listen. They don't tune us out because they've heard it before a million times. So now we have thought about our management plan. We have thought about our expectations. Let's think about how really do I get that management plan to function? How do I work my management plan? And a few things that I want to mention here. When we're working our management plan, it's not, you did this, now you're getting this discipline, you better not do it again, and on we go, and we're known as a big grumpy person. When we're working our management plan, we have to remember to be sensitive to our students. You know, the student that you're dealing with may have never been trained before in how to properly respond to authority in their life. So if you correct them and they respond in a way that's not appropriate, don't be angry with them the first time you broach this situation. Realize that you have training to do. And then do that training and then hold them accountable for implementing the training that you've given to them. So if I'm going to give Sammy a detention, and it's after class, I've said, Sam, see me after class, we don't communicate. I put a sticky note on my lesson plan book, give Sam a detention after class so I don't forget. Everybody else leaves because I don't want to correct him in front of everybody else and make him feel uncomfortable. So I let the other students leave my classroom, and he and I stand at the door, and I say, Sammy, because you were talking during my class, I'm going to need to give you an after school in just a minute. I'm not doing it now. And he starts to argue with me, or he slams a book down, or he rolls his eyes, whatever it may be that's showing disrespect, that's not acceptable. I stop right there and I just say, let me help you with something. I want to keep this discipline at a minimum, but I need your help in that. What I can't allow you to do is the type of things that you've just exhibited. When I correct you, you can't throw things down, you can't be angry, you can't raise your voice, you can't argue with me. This is how I want you to respond. I want you to submit, quietly accept the corrective measure that I'm giving to you, and know that after we have this taken care of, if you want to appeal to me, then at the end of the day today or tomorrow, you can come back and we can talk about it. But for right now, I need you to accept the correction with a good attitude so I can leave it at 1 day of detention and I don't have to increase it to 2 or 3 days of detention, because then I'm dealing with a poor response to authority. So help me with that. Here's a pen. I need you to quietly sign your detention slip and then get on to your next class without any further conversation. So we take time to train our students. We're sensitive to the fact that they may have never been trained in how to respond to authority or to a corrective situation. Remember that you're working with students who are a construction project. They're not a finished product. We are all, if we know the Lord Jesus Christ as Savior, sinners saved by grace. There are times when we will all make poor choices in life and we will do wrong things. And we've had a lot more years of experience than our students. So we need to remember that we're working with a masterpiece that's still being painted. Allow them to see that making a mistake is not the end of the world. I still remember a young lady in my office. She was a senior. I gave her for the first attention she ever received in her high school career. And when I did, she just fell apart. And I had to sit her down and say, let's look at this through proper perspective. I'm correcting you. I'm telling you that you stepped outside of the classroom boundaries. And what's going to happen as a result of that? You need to stay after school for 1 hour. It's in the library. It's an air-conditioned room. You're going to be working on terms and definitions that will help you do well on your Spanish test that you have on Friday. You'll probably do better on it than if you would not have studied in this fashion. And so while you may not want to be in the library for an hour, and while you may feel bad that you have to be there, it's not the end of the world. Everybody's going to make a wrong choice once in a while. The important thing is that you learn from it, and in the future, you stay within the guidelines. I know you well enough to know that that's your desire, and I don't foresee any other situations like this in the future. So it's going to be okay. Let's agree on that. Teach them that making a mistake is not horrible, but that you expect them to make better choices in the future. When do I work that management plan? Always. Always work your management plan. Work it on day 1, day 5, day 150, day 170. Work it all year long and work it with everybody. That way you're not going to have any hard feelings. Nobody's going to think that you're playing favorites. They just know, if you do this in Mrs. Fout's class, this is what's going to happen. We know it happened to my sister last year, and it's happening to me this year, and it's going to happen to me next year if the same thing happens. Let the students know that you're always going to be the same, whether you have a headache or you don't have a headache, whether you've been up late last night or you haven't been up late, whether it's Monday or Wednesday or Friday, it's always going to be the same. So what are some general tips for success in classroom management? Handle each situation on its own merits. If somebody got in trouble before school because they threw a water balloon and it's 5th hour and they're talking, don't bring up before school. Handle the situation about talking on its own merits. Don't lump situations together. Consistently work your management plan without playing favorites. We talked about that. Choose your words and your posture carefully. Be firm, yet considerate. Be firm, but kind in your discipline. Don't be a rollover, but don't be ugly to your kids. When you discipline your students, you should lower your voice and slow the speed of your conversation. That takes it out of the normal conversational tone. It lets them know that something is different. And the slower speed lets them process what you're saying to them. Always use the smallest amount of discipline possible to get the job done. You don't want to clobber them over the head with more discipline than is necessary. That can make a student bitter. That can make a student resentful or rebellious. So discipline them, yes. Discipline them in kindness and use the smallest amount of discipline it takes to get the job done. When you discipline students, do you have to communicate with parents? Most of the time, yes. If it's just little classroom routine, it's no big deal, then go on with life. But anything that's going to result in more than a night of detention or whatever corrective measure you use at your school, if it's a bigger thing, communicate with parents, communicate right away. It's always best to communicate before the student has a chance to take the story home to parents. So communicate in a timely manner. It helps if you've made a phone call early in the year that's been positive, so that would be my suggestion. The first week or two of school, make phone calls home to all of your students and say, hey, I love having Johnny in class. We're going to have a great year. And then later, if you need to call home for discipline, parents have already had an opportunity to get to know you in a positive situation, so they know that you're not a big ogre at school and a grump and unreasonable. So call the parents, let them know Talk about one situation. Don't lump things together and give them a whole laundry list. Say, hey, wanted you to be aware. This is where your students stepped out of the guidelines today. It's not acceptable in my classroom. It's not the end of the world, but we need to get it taken care of. This is the corrective measure that I used, and just wanted you to be aware. If that takes care of everything, then we're moving on, and that's going to be great. If it doesn't, then I will need to give another intervention, and this is what that intervention will be. But I expect the situation to be taken care of. And then end it with something positive. I'll give you a phone call back and let you know that we've got it all taken care of. Thank you so much for working with me in this. And again, it's a joy to have your student in class. I really appreciate you trusting me with his or her education. Always keep your word and follow up when you say that you will. What's your plan for the student in post-discipline? Your plan is to move on with life. Let the student know it's okay. The discipline is over. It's past. The Lord gives us fresh second chances every day, right? The sun comes up, we have a new day every morning. That same thing is true with our students. The discipline is over. It's a brand new situation, a fresh start. The Lord says when we ask him to forgive us, he remembers our sins no more. He removes them as far as the east is from the west. We share that with our students. Discipline is history. I care about you. We're moving on. I'm not remembering it anymore. If they put up a wall, then pray. Ask the Lord to help them be able to take that wall down, that a root of bitterness will not develop. And then just give them time. Smile at them. Ask them to do a fun job with their best friend so they know that you're not holding any grudges. Does my student have responsibility in my classroom? Absolutely. We need to teach our students that they must take educational ownership in the classroom. They're the ones that either will get a great education because they put hard work and perseverance into it, or they'll miss out on that education. They got to know that part of the work is in their ballpark. They've got to get that education accomplished. It's their ticket to their goals and dreams. We're going to give them tools, but they've got to practice using those tools if they want to be successful. If you want to take a hammer and hit a nail on the head, you got to practice till you get it right. You get that nail all the way in with the first shot. And that's the student's job. They need to put personal effort into it. They need to learn to work hard. Isn't that a life lesson, right? We all work hard in life if we're going to accomplish any goals that we have. And so working hard is not a bad thing for students. Life is tough sometimes, and that's a great lesson to not give up. What they craft will be of their own choosing. We'll guide them, we'll encourage them, we'll allow them experiences to satisfy choices well made, we'll allow them to have experiences where poor choices have consequences. All of those are experiences that we'll help them with. But they're the ones that have to take learning into their own hands. So what do we give our students? We give them the knowledge that they have to be actively collecting their tools. They have to actively be listening and participating in our classes. Every single period, all period, until we dismiss them at the end of the period. They don't pack up early and leave when they get tired of learning. They don't check out of a lesson and stop mentally participating. We give them opportunities to practice those skills at night through homework, and we expect them to do that. We expect them to complete assignments to their best of their ability and on time, because that's going to give them good habits that they're developing. But we also let them know that when they've done all of this and they've really tried to accomplish what we've asked them to do, and they can't, that it's okay to come to us as teachers and say, hey, I've tried X, Y, and Z. I can't get this done. Can you please help me? And that's when we come alongside and say, sure, let me give you some tips that will be helpful to you. They should never feel that they can't come to you as their teacher and ask for help in their education. So what is our big picture in the classroom management plan? What is it supposed to yield? Crafting a classroom management plan and working it every hour of every day is going to be extremely helpful to you and to me as teachers this year. Our students are going to have the opportunity to have a positive classroom experience because it's not filled with stopping for discipline here and stopping for discipline here and stopping for discipline here. Things are going to move like a well-oiled machine, and we're going to be pleasant, we're going to be happy, we're going to have manners that we're going to share and model with them. Our students are going to enjoy the adventure that God has called them to this year, learning. We're going to have enjoyment on the adventure that God has called us to this year, teaching. Our students are going to have acquired the tools they need to be successful today and next year and for a lifetime. They're going to be able to be lifelong learners and serve God for His honor and for His glory. And they're going to be able to enjoy the journey that God has called them to. All of this is a part of and a result of a good classroom management plan. So as we get ready for this school year to start, could we agree to take some time to just kind of get alone and think about how we're going to manage our classes, what's going to make our classes be managed in a way that is organized and enjoyable and allows us to accomplish much for the benefit of the students and for our Heavenly Father's glory. I hope that you've enjoyed the few minutes that we've had together. I've tried to share from my heart what I've found to be helpful over these past years, and I hope I've given you some ideas to mull over and think about. And I hope that at some time, if we get to meet in person, you'll say, hey, Renee, some of those ideas were great help in my classroom, and I love the fact that the Lord has called me to be a teacher. What a blessing it is. Thank you so much, and have a great day.